Have you ever felt drained by someone's constant negativity? As if their mere presence saps your peace of mind? Maybe it's a colleague, a friend, or even a family member who brings a storm into your calm. You're not alone. Many of us have faced the challenge of dealing with toxic individuals. But what if there was a way to transform these interactions into opportunities for growth? Imagine a Zen master sitting quietly by a pond. The surface ripples as koi fish swim beneath the water. A student approaches, heavy with frustration, and asks, "Master, how do I protect myself from those who wound me with their words and actions?" The master, without looking up, points to a lotus flower blooming amid the muddy waters and says, "Do you see how the lotus grows, untouched by the filth around it?" This ancient wisdom offers a profound lesson. Toxic relationships, like the mud surrounding the lotus, don't have to define us. Instead, they can teach us resilience, compassion, and the art of letting go. Today, we'll explore how Zen and Buddhist teachings can help you deal with toxic people, not by fighting them, but by mastering yourself. Let's begin this transformative journey together. Toxic relationships are an inevitable part of life. They manifest in various forms: manipulation, negativity, criticism, or constant conflict, and can take a heavy toll on our mental and emotional well-being. Whether it's a difficult boss, a critical parent, or a draining friend, dealing with such individuals can feel like navigating through a storm without an anchor. Buddhist and Zen teachings, however, offer a unique perspective. Instead of viewing toxicity as something external to fight against, these philosophies invite us to look inward. They teach us to respond to toxicity with understanding, compassion, and wisdom while protecting our peace through self-reflection and boundaries. This journey is not about changing others or enduring harm in silence. It's about transforming your approach to these relationships, allowing them to become catalysts for personal growth. Just as the lotus flower rises above the mud, so too can we rise above negativity with the right mindset and tools. In this video, we'll delve into 5 key lessons from Zen and Buddhist wisdom: understanding the roots of toxicity, practicing compassion, setting boundaries, engaging in self-reflection, and mastering the art of letting go. Along the way, we'll provide actionable strategies and insights to help you navigate toxic relationships with grace and resilience. Let's explore each of these teachings in detail. 1. Seeing through the veil of toxicity. Toxicity, much like the murky depths of muddy water, often masks something deeper: a well of pain, unresolved trauma, or unspoken fears within the individual projecting it. Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh captured this beautifully when he said, "When another person makes you suffer, it is because they suffer deeply within themselves. Their suffering is spilling over." This perspective is transformative. It shifts the narrative from one of blame to one of understanding. Instead of seeing the toxic person as an antagonist in your life, you begin to see them as someone carrying burdens they can no longer hold. When we face toxic behavior, our natural reaction is often one of defensiveness or anger. We feel attacked, invalidated, or dismissed, and our first instinct is to either retaliate or retreat. But here lies the profound challenge and opportunity presented by Zen philosophy: to pause, breathe, and observe. Toxic people are not inherently malicious. They are often lost in their own suffering, acting out patterns they may not even be aware of. This does not excuse their behavior, but it does explain it. Imagine for a moment someone who lashes out at you with hurtful words. It feels personal, doesn't it? But what if you could step back and see them as a wounded child crying out for attention, love, or validation? What if, instead of reacting with anger, you could meet their hostility with a quiet curiosity? This isn't about condoning their actions or becoming a doormat. It's about recognizing that their pain is spilling over into your space. And you have the power to decide how to respond. The next time someone's behavior hurts you, take a deep breath and ask yourself, what pain might they be carrying? What unmet need drives this behavior? This single question can open a window to empathy and diffuse the initial sting of their actions. Empathy doesn't mean you accept mistreatment, it simply means you understand the source of their behavior without letting it dictate your emotions. By reframing their actions as a reflection of their inner struggles rather than a measure of your worth, you reclaim your power and prevent their negativity from rooting itself in your heart. Toxicity is like the muddy water in which the lotus flower grows. It's murky, unpleasant, and seemingly overwhelming. But it is also where growth begins. When someone's toxic behavior touches you, it can feel like that mud seeping into your peace. But as the lotus thrives despite its surroundings, so too can you learn to remain unaffected by their negativity. Understanding the roots of toxicity allows you to stop taking their actions personally, freeing you from the heavy emotional toll such interactions often carry. Think of a time when someone's words or actions deeply hurt you. Perhaps it was a cutting remark, a dismissive gesture, or a manipulative act. How did you feel? Betrayed? Angry? Confused? Now, imagine viewing that same interaction through the lens of Zen wisdom. Instead of dwelling on how their actions made you feel, you begin to ask, what pain are they carrying that led to this moment? What inner struggle might they be wrestling with? This doesn't erase the hurt, but it softens its sharp edges. It replaces reactive emotions with a quiet curiosity that allows you to engage with the situation from a place of strength rather than vulnerability. One of the most liberating lessons from Zen philosophy is the realization that toxic behavior is rarely about you. It's not a reflection of your worth or a judgment of your character. It's a projection of the other person's inner world, their fears, insecurities, and unresolved wounds. When you internalize this truth, you free yourself from the weight of their actions. You stop asking, why are they doing this to me? And start asking, what can I learn from this? Of course, understanding toxicity doesn't mean you have to tolerate it. Compassion and boundaries go hand in hand. Recognizing someone's pain doesn't mean you allow them to continually inflict pain on you. Instead, it gives you the clarity to respond wisely. When you see their behavior for what it truly is, a reflection of their inner turmoil, you can address it without letting it destabilize your peace. This understanding becomes a shield, protecting your emotional well-being while allowing you to approach the situation with empathy. Consider this: when someone throws mud at you, your first instinct might be to throw it back, escalating the conflict. But what if you chose to step aside, letting the mud fall harmlessly to the ground? This isn't passivity, it's mastery. It's the ability to remain grounded in your own peace, regardless of the chaos around you. Toxicity loses its power over you when you stop engaging with it on its terms. The beauty of this approach is that it not only liberates you but also creates the possibility for transformation in the other person. When someone expects a defensive or angry response and instead meets calm understanding, it disrupts their pattern. It holds up a mirror to their behavior, inviting them to reflect on their actions. While you cannot change them, you can create an environment where change becomes possible. There will be times, of course, when empathy feels impossible. Some actions cut too deeply, and some wounds take time to heal. That's okay. Understanding toxicity is not about becoming immune to pain, it's about learning to navigate it with wisdom. It's about recognizing that the mud of toxic behavior does not define you. You are the lotus, capable of blooming in any environment. The next time you encounter toxicity, remember this: it's not personal. It's not about you. It's about the other person's struggle, their suffering spilling over. By understanding this, you take the first step toward freeing yourself from their negativity. You begin to rise above the murkiness, just as the lotus rises above the mud. And in doing so, you create space for growth, resilience, and peace within yourself. 2. Compassion is inner liberation. Hatred does not cease by hatred, but only by love. This is the eternal rule, says the Buddha, encapsulating a wisdom that feels both timeless and profoundly challenging. When someone hurts us deeply, the instinct is often to protect ourselves with anger, resentment, or even a desire for retribution. Yet, in doing so, we unknowingly tighten the very chains that bind us to the pain. Compassion, as counterintuitive as it may seem in such moments, is not about condoning the harm inflicted upon us. It is about freeing ourselves from the weight of that harm. Like sunlight melting away the frost, compassion has the power to transform both the giver and, in some cases, the receiver. This doesn't mean you're excusing toxic behavior or erasing its impact. Compassion is not about ignoring boundaries or accepting mistreatment. Instead, it's about reclaiming your emotional freedom. When you choose compassion, you choose to prioritize your peace over the bitterness that toxic people often leave in their wake. You are, in essence, saying, I refuse to let your negativity take root in my heart. This isn't an act of weakness, it's one of immense strength. Compassion doesn't require the other person to change. That's an important distinction to make. Often, we equate kindness with compliance or forgiveness with forgetting. But neither is true in the context of compassionate liberation. Showing kindness to someone who has hurt you doesn't mean you're inviting them to repeat their behavior. Instead, it's about releasing the anger and fear that their actions have planted within you. Compassion is not about their transformation, it's about your own. Imagine carrying a heavy backpack full of stones. Each stone represents an instance of hurt, betrayal, or negativity from someone else. As you walk through life, the weight of this backpack slows you down, saps your energy, and keeps you focused on the pain of the past. Compassion is the act of setting that backpack down. It doesn't mean you forget the weight you carried, but it does mean you choose to no longer let it define your journey. Think about someone in your life who has caused you pain. It might feel impossible to extend kindness toward them, especially if their actions left lasting scars. Start small. In a quiet moment, close your eyes and visualize that person. Imagine the circumstances of their life, the struggles they might be facing, the fears they might be hiding. Without excusing their behavior, recognize that their actions likely stem from their own suffering. Then, silently wish them peace, healing, and happiness. This practice, known as loving kindness meditation, may feel unnatural at first. Your mind might resist, clinging to the anger that feels justified. But over time, this simple act can soften the grip of resentment and open the door to your own inner peace. Compassion doesn't just benefit the recipient, it transforms the giver. When you practice compassion, you shift the focus from the harm inflicted upon you to the healing you can cultivate within yourself. This shift is empowering because it places control back in your hands. Toxic individuals thrive on the reactions they provoke. By responding with compassion, you not only disarm their negativity but also shield yourself from its influence. Compassion is not a surrender, it's a reclaiming of power. Consider the story of a Zen master who was insulted by a passerby. Instead of reacting with anger, the master simply smiled and asked, "If someone offers you a gift and you do not accept it, to whom does the gift belong?" The same is true for negativity. When someone directs harm toward you, compassion allows you to refuse it. You don't have to accept the anger, fear, or hurt they're offering. Instead, you can meet it with kindness, not for their sake, but for yours. Some might argue that compassion is a dangerous path, that it leaves you vulnerable to further harm. But compassion is not about leaving yourself defenseless. In fact, it pairs beautifully with the boundaries we'll explore later. Compassion doesn't mean you allow toxic behavior to continue unchecked. It means you address it with clarity and strength, without letting anger cloud your judgment. It's the difference between responding thoughtfully and reacting impulsively. Let's return to the idea of sunlight melting ice. When you extend compassion, you're not just dissolving the hard edges of resentment within yourself. You're also creating a space where healing becomes possible for both you and the other person. This doesn't mean the toxic individual will suddenly change or recognize their behavior. Often, they won't. But that's not your responsibility. Compassion is about freeing yourself, not fixing others. It's also worth noting that compassion doesn't happen overnight. It's a practice, not a destination. Some days, it will feel easier to extend kindness to those who hurt you. Other days, it will feel impossible. That's okay. True compassion starts with acknowledging your own emotions, anger, hurt, frustration, and then choosing to rise above them when you're ready. There's no timeline for healing. Enforcing compassion before you're prepared can feel inauthentic. Start where you are, and let the practice grow with you. As you cultivate compassion, you may notice a surprising side effect, an increase in your own resilience. Toxic people no longer hold the same power over you because you've shifted your focus. Their words and actions, once capable of derailing your peace, become less significant in the face of your own inner strength. Compassion doesn't erase the harm they've caused, but it does prevent that harm from defining you. It's like learning to navigate a turbulent river without being swept away by its current. There will be moments when your compassion feels rejected, when your kindness is met with more hostility. This can be disheartening. But remember, compassion is not about their response. It's about your choice. By extending kindness, you're not trying to change them, you're choosing to remain true to your own nature. Like the lotus flower blooming above the mud, your growth is not dependent on the environment around you. It's a reflection of your own inner work. In the end, compassion is an act of self-liberation. It's a declaration that you refuse to let anger and resentment take root in your heart. It's a commitment to your own peace, even in the face of toxicity. And while it may not change the toxic person, it will undoubtedly change you, helping you grow stronger, more resilient, and more at peace with yourself and the world around you. 3. Boundaries as bridges. Compassion is a powerful force, but it doesn't mean enduring harm or sacrificing your well-being. A Zen saying reminds us, you can be compassionate without letting yourself be consumed. This wisdom underscores an essential truth: compassion must be paired with boundaries. Without them, we risk losing ourselves in the chaos of others' toxicity. Boundaries are not acts of rejection but of self-respect. They are tools for maintaining your inner peace while navigating relationships with clarity and kindness. Think of boundaries not as walls that isolate but as bridges that foster healthy connections. A wall shuts people out entirely, but a bridge allows interaction on clear, safe terms. Like bamboo bending in the wind, boundaries should be flexible yet firm. They move with the flow of life but remain rooted in your core values. They protect your emotional foundation while allowing you to engage with others in a way that feels safe and empowering. When you begin to set boundaries, it may feel unfamiliar, even uncomfortable. Many of us have been conditioned to prioritize the comfort of others over our own needs. But setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary. It's an act of self-love, a declaration that your well-being matters. Without boundaries, you may find yourself drained, resentful, or overwhelmed by the demands of toxic individuals. With them, you reclaim your agency and create space for peace. Imagine a garden without a fence. It's vulnerable to intrusions, wild animals, weeds, or even unintentional trampling. But a fence doesn't mean the garden is closed off entirely. It simply defines its space, ensuring that what's inside is nurtured and protected. In the same way, boundaries safeguard your emotional and mental garden, allowing you to grow without fear of being overrun by negativity. Setting boundaries begins with understanding your own needs. What drains your energy? What makes you feel unsafe or unappreciated? Taking the time to reflect on these questions is the first step. Once you've identified your needs, the next step is communicating them clearly and compassionately. This can feel daunting, especially if you're used to avoiding conflict. But boundary setting isn't about confrontation, it's about clarity. Start small. Practice saying, "This is what I need," without over-explaining or justifying. For example, if a friend frequently calls you late at night and it disrupts your rest, you might say, "I've realized I need to keep my evenings for relaxation. Let's talk during the day instead." Notice how this statement is both firm and kind. It communicates your need without attacking or blaming the other person. Over time, setting boundaries becomes a natural expression of your self-respect. It's not about changing others, but about honoring yourself. Some people will respect your boundaries immediately. Others may resist, especially if they're used to crossing your limits without consequence. This resistance is normal and not a sign that you're doing something wrong. In fact, it often indicates that your boundaries are working. Those who truly value you will adapt, those who don't may fall away, and that's okay. One of the most empowering aspects of boundaries is the freedom they bring. When you set clear limits, you no longer have to carry the weight of others' expectations or demands. You create space for what truly matters: your well-being, your passions, your growth. Boundaries allow you to engage with others from a place of strength rather than obligation. They transform relationships from draining to nourishing by fostering mutual respect. It's important to remember that boundaries are not fixed. Like bamboo, they can bend and adjust to different circumstances. For instance, you might set a firm boundary with a toxic colleague to limit their impact on your workday. But with a loved one who's going through a difficult time, your boundaries might become more flexible, allowing room for compassion and support. The key is to stay rooted in your values, ensuring that any adjustment aligns with your well-being. For many, the hardest part of setting boundaries is the fear of conflict. What if they get upset? What if they stop talking to me? These fears are valid, especially if you've experienced pushback in the past. But consider this: avoiding conflict by ignoring your own needs only creates inner turmoil. By setting boundaries, you're not creating conflict, you're preventing it. Clear communication reduces misunderstandings and resentment, paving the way for healthier interactions. Think of a time when you felt taken advantage of or disrespected. How did it affect your mood, your energy, your sense of self? Now imagine how that situation might have changed if you had expressed your needs early on. Boundaries are like a compass, guiding you toward interactions that uplift rather than deplete you. They're not about shutting people out, but about inviting them to engage with you in a way that honors your worth. It's also worth noting that boundaries are not just about saying no. They're about defining what you're willing to say yes to. When you set a boundary, you're creating space for positive interactions and experiences. You're telling the world, "This is how I deserve to be treated." And in doing so, you inspire others to respect not only you but also themselves. Boundaries, when set with compassion, have a ripple effect, encouraging healthier dynamics in all your relationships. Sometimes, setting boundaries means walking away from a toxic relationship entirely. This can be one of the hardest decisions to make, especially if the person is a close friend or family member. But remember, letting go is not an act of cruelty, it's an act of kindness to yourself. By removing yourself from a harmful situation, you're choosing peace over pain, growth over stagnation. And in doing so, you're setting an example of what it means to live authentically. As you continue to practice setting boundaries, you'll notice a shift in how you experience the world. Toxic individuals will no longer have the same hold over you. Their negativity, once overwhelming, will feel less significant because you've created a buffer, a space where their energy can no longer reach. This doesn't mean you'll never encounter toxicity again, but it does mean you'll be better equipped to handle it. Boundaries are bridges, not barriers. They connect you to others in a way that feels safe and supportive. They allow you to give and receive compassion without losing yourself in the process. And most importantly, they empower you to live with integrity, honoring your own needs while respecting the needs of others. By setting boundaries, you're not just protecting your peace, you're building a foundation for relationships that thrive on mutual respect and understanding. 4. The mirror of self-reflection. Zen philosophy teaches us that the world we experience is often a mirror of our internal state. This can be both comforting and challenging, especially when we find ourselves repeatedly drawn into toxic relationships or interactions. It's natural to place the blame outward, to see the other person's behavior as the sole source of conflict. But what if the repeated patterns in our relationships are trying to tell us something about ourselves? What if these experiences are less about the people we encounter and more about the lessons we still need to learn? Self-reflection invites us to turn inward and ask the difficult questions. When someone's behavior deeply affects us, it's worth pausing to consider why. What about their words or actions triggers such a strong emotional response? Could it be highlighting an unhealed wound or a fear we've yet to face? These moments, though painful, are opportunities to uncover the parts of ourselves that remain vulnerable to negativity. By understanding our triggers, we gain the power to break free from the cycles that keep us stuck. Imagine encountering someone who constantly undermines your efforts. Their criticism feels personal, cutting, and relentless. At first, it's easy to focus on their behavior, how unfair or unkind they are. But self-reflection asks you to look deeper. Why does their opinion matter so much to you? Does it touch on a past experience of feeling unworthy or unappreciated? By identifying the source of your pain, you can begin to heal it, reducing the power their words have over you. This process isn't about blaming yourself for others' actions. It's about taking responsibility for your growth. Toxic interactions can act as mirrors, showing us where we still have work to do. When we approach these situations with curiosity rather than defensiveness, they become less about suffering and more about learning. For example, if you find yourself constantly seeking approval from people who take you for granted, it might be time to explore where this need for validation originates. Is it rooted in a fear of rejection? A lack of self-worth? The answers may not come easily, but each layer you uncover brings you closer to freedom. After a toxic interaction, take a moment to sit with your emotions. Write them down, every frustration, every hurt, every fear. Don't censor yourself, let it flow freely onto the page. Then, step back and reflect. What triggered these feelings? What patterns can you identify? Over time, this practice can transform pain into wisdom, giving you the tools to navigate future interactions with greater clarity and resilience. Self-reflection also teaches us to recognize our role in the dynamics we create. This isn't about self-criticism but about empowerment. For instance, if you often feel drained by others' demands, it might be worth examining your boundaries. Are you saying yes to things you should decline? Are you afraid of disappointing others at the expense of your own peace? By understanding these patterns, you can make conscious choices that align with your well-being. Sometimes, The mirror of self-reflection reveals behaviors we didn't realize we had. Perhaps we've been unknowingly projecting our fears or frustrations onto others, contributing to the very dynamics we wish to avoid. This realization can be humbling, but it's also liberating. When we take responsibility for our part, we reclaim the power to change. We can apologize, adjust, and grow, creating space for healthier interactions moving forward. It's important to approach self-reflection with kindness. The goal isn't to judge or criticize yourself, but to understand and nurture your growth. Think of it like cleaning a dusty mirror. At first, the imperfections may seem overwhelming, but as you wipe away the layers, you begin to see your reflection clearly. This clarity allows you to move through the world with greater confidence and peace. As you deepen your self-awareness, you may find that the toxicity in your relationships begins to dissipate. This isn't because the external world has changed, but because your internal state has. When you heal the wounds that make you vulnerable to negativity, you become less reactive, less likely to engage in destructive dynamics. Toxic people lose their grip on you because you no longer need their approval, attention, or validation. Self-reflection also helps us recognize when it's time to let go. Some relationships persist not because they serve us, but because we're afraid to release them. Perhaps we fear being alone or believe we can fix the other person. But through reflection, we learn to differentiate between connections that challenge us to grow and those that simply drain us. Letting go of a toxic relationship can be one of the most loving acts you do for yourself. It's a way of saying, I value my peace more than my fear of change. This journey is not linear. There will be days when reflection feels empowering and days when it feels overwhelming. That's okay. Growth is rarely straightforward, and healing takes time. Be patient with yourself. Celebrate the small victories, like recognizing a pattern or choosing to respond differently in a challenging situation. Each step you take brings you closer to the person you're meant to be. Remember, the outer world reflects your inner state. But this isn't a burden, it's a gift. It means that by changing your internal landscape, you can transform your experience of the world. Toxic relationships, though painful, are not the end of the story. They are the starting point for a deeper understanding of yourself, a gateway to growth and resilience. The next time you find yourself in a toxic interaction, pause and look in the mirror, not the physical one, but the metaphorical one that Zen philosophy speaks of. Ask yourself, what is this teaching me? How can I grow from this? The answers may surprise you, and they will undoubtedly empower you. You have the strength to break free from negativity, not by changing others, but by transforming yourself. This is the power of self-reflection, and it is a gift only you can give yourself. 5. The art of letting go. Attachment is the root of suffering, and nowhere is this more apparent than in toxic relationships. We hold on, sometimes desperately, to people or situations that no longer serve us, believing that with enough effort, we can fix or change them. Yet, the harder we cling, the more entangled we become in their negativity, and the more we lose sight of our own well-being. Letting go is not an act of giving up, it's an act of faith in yourself, in the other person, and in the natural flow of life. It's a recognition that not every path is meant to be walked together forever, and that some journeys must diverge for growth to occur. Letting go doesn't mean abandoning compassion. In fact, it requires a profound depth of love and understanding, both for yourself and the other person. It's saying, I trust you to find your own way, as I must find mine. This trust is not about expecting a particular outcome, but about releasing the need to control the narrative. It's about accepting that some chapters must end for new ones to begin. Imagine for a moment a bird and a fish trying to exist together. The bird might long to teach the fish to fly, believing that soaring through the skies will bring it happiness. But the fish is meant to swim, not fly. The bird's efforts, though well-intentioned, only create frustration and harm for both. A Zen master once said, "A bird cannot teach a fish to fly." Some paths are not meant to intertwine for long. Letting go is about recognizing this truth and choosing to release the struggle, trusting that each being will thrive in its own element. When you let go of toxic relationships, you create space for healthier connections. You open the door for relationships built on mutual respect and understanding, rather than ones weighed down by resentment or unmet expectations. Letting go doesn't erase the memories or invalidate the time you shared. Instead, it allows you to honor the relationship for what it was and release the pain of what it couldn't be. It's a way of saying, "Thank you for the lessons, but I need to move forward." One of the most challenging aspects of letting go is the fear of emptiness. We often cling to toxic relationships because they feel familiar, even if they're harmful. The thought of releasing them can feel like stepping into an unknown void. But that void isn't emptiness, it's possibility. It's a blank canvas where you can paint a life that reflects your values, your peace, and your growth. By letting go, you make room for new connections, experiences, and opportunities that align with the person you are becoming. Resentment is another weight we carry when holding on to toxicity. It's as if we're drinking poison, hoping the other person will suffer. But resentment only traps us in a cycle of anger and pain. When you let go of resentment, you free yourself from this cycle. Forgiveness, in this sense, is not about condoning harmful behavior but about reclaiming your peace. It's about saying, "I refuse to let your actions control my emotions any longer." Forgiveness is a gift you give to yourself, a key that unlocks the chains of bitterness and allows you to move forward unburdened. A powerful exercise for letting go involves visualization. Close your eyes and imagine the person or situation as an object you're holding tightly in your hands. Picture a flowing river in front of you. With each breath, loosen your grip, and when you're ready, release the object into the river. Watch as the current carries it away, out of sight. This mental image helps you detach emotionally, reminding you that you are not defined by what you've let go of. Instead, you are defined by the freedom and clarity you gain. Letting go also requires patience with yourself in the process. It's not a one-time decision but a practice you return to again and again. Some days, you'll feel the weight lift easily. Other days, it may feel as though it's latched onto your heart. This is normal. Healing is rarely linear, and true detachment takes time. Each small step toward release is a victory. And over time, those steps add up to a journey of profound transformation. As you practice letting go, you may begin to notice shifts in how you view the world. The pain that once consumed you starts to lose its intensity. The person who once had so much power over your emotions begins to fade into the background. This doesn't mean the memories disappear, but they become less charged, less able to pull you back into the cycle of suffering. You realize that you are more than the hurt you've endured, that your life is not defined by the toxic relationship you've released. Letting go doesn't mean you'll never think about the person or situation again. It means that when you do, the thought no longer stirs the same pain. Instead, it serves as a reminder of your growth, your strength, and your capacity to choose peace. It's a testament to the resilience of your spirit and your commitment to honoring your own worth. Sometimes, letting go means walking away entirely. Other times, it means emotionally detaching while remaining physically present, such as in cases where leaving isn't an option. Both forms of letting go require courage and a deep sense of self-awareness. In either case, the goal is the same: to free yourself from the grip of negativity and reclaim your inner peace. Ultimately, Letting go is an act of love, not just for yourself but for the other person as well. It acknowledges that neither of you can grow while clinging to a dynamic that no longer serves you. It's a way of saying, I release you to your journey, and I release myself to mine. In doing so, you create the possibility for both of you to find the healing and happiness you deserve. As you let go, remember that this is not an end but a beginning. It's the start of a new chapter. One where you are no longer weighed down by the past but free to embrace the present and build a future rooted in peace and authenticity. Trust the process. Trust yourself. And trust the flow of life to guide you toward what is meant for you. Letting go is not a loss, it's a liberation. It's the ultimate act of faith in your ability to rise above and thrive. In the journey of navigating toxic relationships, understanding and self-awareness are vital. But knowledge alone is not enough, it must be paired with action. Practicing strategies that align with your growth and peace transforms wisdom into lived experience. These practices, simple yet profound, serve as anchors in the storm of negativity, helping you respond rather than react, heal rather than hurt, and thrive rather than merely survive. When faced with a toxic interaction, the immediate temptation is often to react. Words may rise unbidden to your lips, sharp and defensive, or you may retreat in silence, carrying the weight of the encounter with you. But what if, in that moment, you could pause, just for a breath, a heartbeat? This small pause is a profound act of courage and control. By taking a deep breath, you give yourself the gift of reflection. In this pause, you create space to choose your response rather than allowing impulsive reactions to dictate the course of events. The power of this practice lies in its simplicity. Whenever you feel the tension building, stop, inhale deeply, and exhale slowly. This deliberate act reminds you that you are not at the mercy of another's actions, you have the agency to determine your own. To deepen this practice, incorporate loving kindness into your daily routine. At first, this may feel counterintuitive, especially when directed toward those who have caused you pain. But loving kindness, or metta meditation, is not about excusing toxic behavior. It's about liberating yourself from the grip of resentment. Dedicate a few quiet minutes each day to sit in stillness. Visualize the people in your life, starting with those you care for deeply. Silently wish them peace, happiness, and freedom from suffering. Then, extend these wishes to yourself. And finally, to the toxic individuals you've encountered. This act of compassion doesn't condone their actions but softens the hardness within you, making space for healing and clarity. Over time, this practice transforms your inner landscape, allowing you to approach difficult situations with greater equanimity and grace. Boundaries are another essential tool in your toolkit. They are not just about protecting yourself but also about inviting healthier dynamics into your relationships. The key to setting boundaries is clarity. Use simple, direct language to communicate your needs. For example, if someone consistently interrupts your personal time, say, I value our conversations, but I need uninterrupted time in the evenings to recharge. Let's find a better time to talk. This statement is neither confrontational nor defensive, it's clear, kind, and firm. Boundaries are an expression of self-respect. And each time you set one, you reinforce your commitment to your own well-being. Over time, they become second nature, a natural extension of your desire for peace. Engaging in self-inquiry is equally important. Toxic relationships often serve as mirrors, reflecting our unresolved wounds and fears. Journaling is a powerful way to explore these reflections. After a difficult interaction, take a moment to write down your emotions and triggers. What made you feel hurt or angry? What memories or patterns does this interaction bring up? By identifying these patterns, you gain insight into your vulnerabilities and can begin to address them. Journaling is not about blaming yourself, but about uncovering the root causes of your reactions. This process, though sometimes uncomfortable, is a gateway to profound growth and freedom. Letting go is the final and perhaps most transformative step. Releasing resentment is not easy, it requires intention and practice. One way to let go with grace is to create a personal ritual or visualization. Imagine holding the person or situation in your hands, feeling its weight. Then, visualize a flowing river in front of you. Gently place the burden into the water and watch as the current carries it away. This act of release is symbolic, but its impact is real. It allows you to shift your focus from what you cannot control to what you can, your own peace and happiness. Each of these practices, pausing and reflecting, cultivating loving-kindness, setting boundaries, engaging in self-inquiry, and letting go, is a piece of a larger mosaic. Together, they create a framework for navigating the complexities of toxic relationships while maintaining your integrity and peace. These are not one-time fixes, but ongoing practices, each one deepening your capacity for resilience and compassion. As you integrate these strategies into your life, you may find that the toxicity around you begins to lose its hold. This isn't because the people or situations have necessarily changed, but because you have. Your pause before reacting creates space for thoughtful responses. Your loving kindness dissolves the edges of anger and resentment. Your boundaries protect your energy and time, while your self-inquiry reveals patterns you're ready to release. And your ability to let go brings a sense of freedom that no external circumstance can shake. These practices are not about perfection. There will be days when the pause feels impossible, when resentment creeps back in, or when setting boundaries feels daunting. That's okay. Growth is a journey, not a destination. Each step, no matter how small, is a victory. Celebrate your progress, and be patient with yourself when challenges arise. Remember, the goal is not to eliminate all toxicity from your life. That's beyond anyone's control. The goal is to cultivate an inner sanctuary so strong that external negativity cannot disturb your peace. In embracing these strategies, you reclaim your power. You move from a place of reaction to one of intention, from being at the mercy of toxic dynamics to navigating them with strength and clarity. These practices are not just tools for managing relationships, they are pathways to a more peaceful, resilient, and authentic version of yourself. Trust in your ability to grow, and know that every moment of practice brings you closer to the life you deserve. Thank you for joining me on this journey today. When facing toxic people, remember that true strength doesn't come from changing them, it comes from discovering and mastering yourself. Every time you choose peace over reaction, compassion over resentment, you're not just freeing yourself from emotional chains. You're illuminating the path of growth and resilience for your own life. Imagine planting a seed in the garden of your soul. Each act of compassion, every boundary you set, and each time you let go of unnecessary burdens, all of it is like water nourishing that seed. One day, this garden will bloom, filled with serenity, strength, and the vibrant colors of personal growth. You won't just be surviving, you'll be thriving, living with clarity and calm. Before you go, I invite you to reflect on one thing you can start doing today. Maybe it's as simple as pausing to take a deep breath before reacting. Or perhaps it's sending a kind thought to someone you found difficult to approach. Share your idea in the comments, I'd love to hear your story. And perhaps your story will be the light that guides someone else on their path. If this video inspired or brought something meaningful to you, subscribe to the channel and join me in exploring more lessons on growth, compassion, and living peacefully amidst life's challenges. And don't forget to hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of the upcoming videos. Finally, remember that every small step you take is a part of a much bigger picture. Trust in your journey and the strength that lies within you. Like the lotus rising from muddy waters to bloom in radiant beauty, you too can transform challenges into the foundation for your brilliance. I'll see you in the next video, where we'll continue exploring ways to grow, heal, and build a life that truly reflects who you are meant to be.